addition polymers, what we're going to talk about here. So what I have drawn on the left hand side here, I've drawn some small molecules, and these are called monomers, mono for one, and they're joined together by covalent bonds into a big molecule called a polymer. So I've drawn dots at the end there to show you, like these, usually we're talking thousands of these small monomers to form one polymer molecule. All right, so you've probably come across some polymers before in biology. So for example, starch is a polymer of glucose. Amino acids, they're monomers, and they polymerize to form proteins. What we're going to look at here is one kind of polymers called addition polymers, and these are formed by the reaction of alkenes. So we've already talked about addition reactions of alkenes. So for example, the simplest alkene is ethene. And in addition reactions, what happens is, so for example, you use this reaction for testing with bromine water. If you get bromine, which is bromine dissolved in water, it's red, and you shake it up, what happens? You get an addition reaction. And in an addition reaction, the double bond breaks, the single bond remains intact, and that means those carbons aren't forming enough bonds anymore, they're only forming three. So a bromine sticks on there, and let's break that covalent bond there, and a bromine will stick on there. So that's an addition reaction where you lose the double bond. Okay, now ethene can undergo a polymerization reaction, which is also an addition reaction. So here are the monomers. Okay, so these are the small molecules. I've only drawn 4 of them here. It should be thousands. And the monomers in this case are ethene. And what happens is you break the double bonds break, but the single bond remains intact. And then, because those carbons are not forming enough bonds, you form a new covalent bond between the carbons on adjacent ethenes, like that. Okay, so we end up with a very long molecule, and this is called polyethene, which is basically the stuff that sort of cheap disposable plastic bags are made out of, that plastic called polyethene. So if we had to think about the monomers, ethene, well, that is a gas at room temperature. Polyethene is obviously a solid at room temperature, and that's because the intermolecular forces are bigger between the polyethene molecules because it's a bigger molecule. Okay, so we've seen this with alkanes. As as the alkanes get longer, they stop being gases, they become liquids, and eventually they get so long they're actually solids. Okay, so how do we draw this out? Well, the way we normally draw this out, rather than doing what I just did, we would write down an ethene molecule, and to show there's lots of them, we'd put N in front, so you've got N ethene molecules. Now they're going to react, and they're going to form a polymer. Now, I'll draw. What you do is you just draw something called a repeating unit. Okay, so I draw that there, and then we put a bracket around that bit, and that bit within the square brackets is going to be repeated N times. Okay, and as I say, this bit is called the repeating unit. And it's 2 carbons with hydrogens attached to them, and that will form very long molecules. Right, now polyethene is just one kind of addition polymer. There are a couple of others we could mention. So you may have heard of Teflon. Okay, now Teflon is they use it on the surface of frying pans. It's a non-stick surface. Right, polyethene, that would be fairly non-stick, but that would burn. Whereas Teflon doesn't burn. And the Teflon is made from this monomer, where instead of having hydrogens on ethene, you have 4 fluorines. So that is the monomer. Okay, now what's the polymer going to look like? Well, we're going to break the double bond between the carbons, and I'll draw a couple of them here. I'll just draw two because it's taking a long time, but I could draw more. And again, what happens is we break the double bond and we form a new single between the two carbons there. Now, normally when we write this, we just write down a repeating unit. So I'll put n in front of that, and I'll put a square bracket here. So that is the repeating unit, that there. I'll just rub that out. Let's just show you what was going on there. So that would be that's the monomer, and this is the polymer. It's called Teflon, and it won't burn because the carbon-fluorine bond is actually so strong that it's very unreactive and unstable, and very unreactive and very stable molecule. Just do a couple more. You may have heard of PVC. PVC is short for polyvinyl chloride. Now, vinyl chloride, we wouldn't actually call it vinyl chloride anymore. It's the old-fashioned name. We call it chloroethene. Well, that looks like this. There's chloroethene. So one of the hydrogens is replaced by a chlorine. So what's the polymer going to look like there? Well, it's going to be very similar to ethene, except every other carbon is going to have a chlorine atom on it there. Okay, and PVC is a bit stronger than just normal polyethene. Do one last one. Let's do polypropylene. Okay, now the monomer is actually propene. So let's draw propene. And so propene looks like this. Right, so how is that going to polymerize? Well, the easiest thing to think about it is if we just compare it to ethene. So I'll draw ethene here. And you're going to break the bond between those two carbons, okay? So you're going to break that double bond there. In this case, you're going to break that bond there. Well, let's see what's attached to them. So in ethene, on one carbon, we've got a hydrogen and another hydrogen. We've got the same in propene. On the other carbon, you have a hydrogen. That's the same in propene. But in propene, we don't just have a hydrogen there. We have this whole group, this CH3 group. So I'm going to draw some propenes next to each other and show how they're going to polymerize. So I'll draw a few propene monomers. So we have H, 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 and here, rather than writing out this in full, I'm just going to write CH3. Okay, and then I'm going to have, that will be a CH3 there, and so on. Right, and when it forms a polymer, what's going to happen? Again, it's addition polymer, so you break the double bond and you form a new bond between these two carbons, new bond there, and that's sort of going to carry on forever. Right, and the repeating unit, well, the repeating unit would be, we draw the square brackets, would be that. So it's every other carbon is going to have one of those CH3 groups on it, and the rest is all hydrogens. And again, polypropylene is a bit stronger than polyethene. Now the problem with all of these addition polymers is that they do not biodegrade. So they hang around for an awfully long time. And that's because microorganisms can't break these carbon-carbon bonds. They just don't have enzymes which can break these carbon-carbon bonds. They're very resistant to change, and they just stay there forever. Okay. What are these polymers made from? Well, obviously, Polyethene is made from ethene. And if you remember, where does ethene come from? Well, it is made from cracking of larger alkane molecules. So as you probably know that plastics are made from crude oil, and that's how they are made from crude oil. So first of all, cracking to make ethene, and then the ethenes are all polymerized together to make very long polymer molecules. There are, we've talked here about addition polymerization, and there is another kind of polymer that doesn't involve alkenes, and they're called condensation polymers. And they're covered in another videos. Condensation polymers, the ones we need to know about are actually, they are polyesters. Long molecules held together by ester linkages. So condensation polymers are made from carboxylic acids and alcohols. They are not made from alkenes. These ones are made from alkenes. Condensation polymers are not.